Alright guys, this video is meant to show you another style of rendering that you can do. This one is done mostly in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and is a little unique. It's more of a diagrammatic render than a super realistic one. It's not something that you would pull out of Enscape or V-Ray. It's mostly done in Illustrator, and I think it has a really nice quality to it. So if your guys' computers struggle with rendering like mine does and getting those hyper realistic renders, this is probably a good option for you. This is in tandem with one of Sheehan's tutorials that already exists. It's applying textures via Photoshop and images that you find online. I would recommend following his tutorial for how to do that, and then watching this tutorial and kind of following my steps. From there, I'll also show you guys my quick and dirty way of applying textures in Photoshop. It's not as good as what Sheehan does by any means. Anyway, we're going to start in Rhino, and this is just a quick mock-up that I made of the thermal vols. This is like the top elevation, or the very top platform. I'm sure you guys are overly familiar with this project by now. And we're going to make 2D our perspective. I've saved the image, I've lined it up, I've done everything that I need to do. So we'll go up to the top and do select all. Don't know why that's there. Okay, that was weird. So select all and make 2D. For this instance, I just had show tangent edges and show the viewport rectangle because that makes it easier to crop later on. Hit OK. And we'll go to our top-down view, move it out, and there you are. Just a nice little line drawing, pretty simple. And you can see the one that I made earlier today. So this one's all nice and cleaned up. We can do the same to this one just by deleting the extraneous pieces. We then select it, File, Export Selected, and we choose an Adobe Illustrator file. You see I've already done quite a few. I saved this one as line work. And we'll go ahead and open that. So here you see line work. And you guys will all get something similar to this once you export. We didn't export at any specific scale because this is a rendering. It's kind of hard to scale those properly. And I'm going to begin by picking just a generic size that I want this photo to be, something that I'll be able to remember to put into Photoshop later. So we'll make it an 18 by 11. And what I'll do is select the line work, drag it up to a corner, zoom out a little bit, and scale it so that the top and the bottom just barely fit. You see we have some overlap. What I'm going to do is center everything that I want to be seen. And we're going to just start deleting the rest, trimming everything else away that we don't need. It's kind of extra. And I'll show you guys little Illustrator tips along the way. If you press C on your keyboard, it brings you to the scissors tool, which lets you cut lines. So once you select it, so you can cut that line, delete those little pieces, and we can do the same thing over here, cut and cut. And then just select it and delete both of those. And so we have a nicely framed line drawing now. at a scale or at a dimension that we know the artboard to be. And so we can file and save it, and it'll automatically want to save it in this naming convention, line work converted. I typically do that. Name it whatever you want as long as you remember it. Okay. Now we're going to go over to Photoshop. And this is where you kind of want to pick up on Sheen's tutorial of putting textures on an image via Photoshop. I will show you my quick and dirty version of that right now. It's not the best. It works. It's what I did for this. But you have a texture that you find. Since this is the thermal walls, I obviously chose the stacked stone that they have. And I will drag and drop that onto my board. Okay. And from here, what I like to do is I'll turn the opacity down a little bit so I can see everything nice and clearly. I'll line up the corners of one edge. Oh, I don't want to rotate. Line up the corners of one edge that I want to be aligned. And I'll scroll down and I'll scale this until it lines up with that bottom corner. And then you can go File, Edit, Transform, and Skew. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to warp the picture by picking the points, moving them around, so you want to make it fit the rest of the lines. And you want to make this texture conform to whatever dimensions, perspectives you have that you've preset on your line work. You're just melding this to that. Now you notice this doesn't make much sense at an angle, so this actually needs to come out if we're treating this as just a panel of material. And you can hit OK. And you see now all of the lines and striations of that material fit with the direction of the perspective that we're in. And I'll come over here and I'll pick the polygonal lasso tool, select the corners that I want to delete. Boom, boom, boom. Fun fact about the polygonal lasso tool, you just hit enter at any point, it'll automatically connect your first point and your last point. Saves you some time, and we can just delete that. So now you repeat that, or you follow Sheen's instructions all the way until you have all of this. And it takes some time, but it's less time than you think. This whole thing took me maybe 30 minutes to do, maybe. But it's a nice end result. So you see it's a little overboard. There's a lot of texture. There's a lot of stuff going on. I also have the doors as another texture, as a wood gray. So again, jumping back from Sheen's tutorial, you're going to end with quite a few different materials on different layers in Photoshop. You want to make sure that all of those layers, like let's say that this guy floating out here is another thing. You want to make sure that all of the same material are on the same layers. So you want to select all of the same material in the layers panel, you right click, and you hit merge layers. And that puts all of these different panels all together. That's exactly what you want. And that's what I did with this one as well. That's important because of what we're about to do. So you see I'm hiding everything, just the background. I have just the material that I want, and we're going to export this as a PNG. So we go to File, Export, Export As. This window should pop up. My computer's being a little slow. You see we have PNG selected. We have transparency selected, which is important. And once this loads, I'll show you guys why. We want this background to be nothing. We don't want it to be a white background. We want just the elements that we have covered to be showing. And so that's what the transparent background means, is like we have here on our preset, we want to see that checkered background on the preview. This is taking a little long because I'm recording at the same time and my computer is a potato. But, so we'll cancel that, but you just hit export all and it'll prompt you to save your file and you save it as whatever you want. See, there you go. It loaded. You see the checkerboard in the background that's not filled in with white. That is exactly what you want. And you would hit export all. And I saved it as material. Good. Hit save. That's all you need to do. Okay. And then we want to do that for the rest of the materials that you have. So you hide the other one and you export just these. It'll come in here. You'll see why later. And same thing, file, export as, make sure PNG is selected, make sure transparency is selected, and you're good to go. So I'll just end that now. So now we come back over to our nice, actually, let me open up a new one just so that everything lines up. My line work converted. So we have our line work and we're going to make a few layers. We're going to make 3 new layers. One of them is going to be stone. That's the stone material. This one will be wood. And this one will be shadow. That's all you need. I like to lock make 2D. And I'll lock those other two just for the sake of it. I'll select the stone layer and go File, Place. We'll select that PNG that we just made. Pick a corner, drag and drop, and everything should line up perfectly if you did it all right. And I'm going to put the line work on top so that we can see it. And I'm going to go to Wood, File, Place. Pick the wood, and if we exported that PNG correctly, we should just do drag and drop, and boom, perfect. So we have both of those materials. Now, this is where Illustrator really comes in handy, and this is how we make a more diagrammatic texture. It is a tool called Image Trace. You go to the window, and you come down here just below graphic styles and you click Image Trace. It will open up this side window here. What this allows us to do, and I'm going to show you guys how it works in this separate little file. What this lets us do is Illustrator will go and pick out various colors from an image that we've selected, and it will abstractly recreate that image with however many colors we chose it to do that with. So there's a few presets. You can totally use those if you want. You can make it grayscale, and you can make it black and white. You can do whatever. So we're going to start with color. And I'm going to start with having it select 2 colors. You don't normally want to do this, but I'm just going to show you guys what it does. And we have our image selected. It won't let you do this if the image isn't selected. We have our image selected, and we hit trace. And it's going to think for a little bit. And I have it set to black and white. Whoops. I'm going to put it to color. Just like Photoshop, this is going to take my computer a little bit longer than it'll take yours. And there we go. You see, it's on 30 colors. It switched it off of 2 for whatever reason. But the image is now made of these abstracted shapes that Illustrator has put together for us. And you can kind of play around with the number of colors that Illustrator is going to use, and to make it more abstract, more cartoonish, and make it look kind of nice. There's also an option up here on the mode for grayscale, it does exactly what you would think it does. It gets rid of all the colors and only does shades of black and white. The other mode on there is also black and white. That just does black and white. There's no tone in between. I wouldn't recommend using that for much. But that's how image trace works. Have fun with it. See what you want to do. Try it out yourselves. And we're going to do exactly that same thing. Oh shit, I keep going to this file. We're going to do exactly that thing to this. So we have image trace selected. We're going to go color, and I'm going to say 12 colors. We're going to hit trace. This error message is going to come up. It's okay. It just means that the image that we're giving it is large. It'll still work just fine. This isn't a very graphic intensive process. So my laptop is handling it perfectly fine. And you see, there wasn't very much change from looking at everything, but it's all of these little squiggles now. It's more cartoony, it's more abstract, it's what we're looking for in this particular example. This texture probably isn't the best to show a very drastic difference, but it works. And so we're going to very quickly do the same thing to the wood. This time I'll pick 30 because I want the wood to be a little bit more detailed. I'll hit trace. This should take less time. I just realized I did a mistake, so I'm going to stop that. Under advanced, you want to make sure that ignore white is checked. Both times you trace it. You want to ensure that that is the case, because if not, it's going to take all of this white background that you have on your PNG, and it's going to make it white. It's going to fill it in. You don't want to do that because you want to put some kind of background to your render, so it's not just a blank space. So we make sure that's picked. That's at 30, and there we go. Our doors are nicely edited and made more cartoony. That's perfect, right? And that's kind of what we do with image trace. Now, I know what you're all thinking, this looks a little flat. It doesn't look like a rendering, it just looks like it has material on it. And you're entirely right. So we can very easily add shadow the same way that we did, not the same way, but in Illustrator, using the pen tool. So just come up here, hit the pen tool. And I know this is where you would want to take out your screenshots of the renders that you have. Use these as a guide. Maybe even put those in your Illustrator file and put it in the background and trace them to get the lighting quality that you want. This is just such a generic shape, I can do it by hand. But we'll start in this corner, and I know the light's going to cascade down at that angle, and I know that what areas are going to be in shadow. We'll come up here, and it'll be about there. And I'll continue this down to, let's say, about there. And just drawing around all of the areas that I know will be encapsulated in shadow. We'll make it black. And instead of making it a particular color, we're just going to turn down the opacity until it looks right. So at about 50%, that's a nice deep dark shadow. That's the kind of sun that you would see here in Arizona. This is in more north, more diffuse light, so we'll make it a bit brighter. And that already adds so much depth. And you just keep adding shadows and shade to all of the areas that would get it. until it begins to look right to you. And at the very end, you get this. And this is where you look at the other tutorials that we have on posted E2L. You get entourage, you put people in, you get trees, you put in a background. We have all the tutorials for that. I hope this helps you guys, and remember to have fun with this.